pegged at 420,000 cedis respectively.
Now, in our very first story, government is set to dispose of the 86 gallopers rotting away at the local government institute in Medina. According to Deputy Finance Minister Kweku Kwarteng, valuation of the vehicles has begun and they will be sold off by the end of the year.
Now, there have been concerns and a series of reports by City News on the vehicles that were brought into the country almost 20 years ago, but have been the subject of litigation between government and Africa Automobile Limited. There's more in the following report.
If the vehicles could be equated to newborn babies, the said individuals would have blossomed into 19-year-old teenagers by now. But the situation is not the same with these 86 cross-country vehicles. They were first brought into the country in 1999 at the behest of the Rawlings government. So this is the Institute of Local Government Studies at Medina here in Accra. It's a place for training technocrats of our country in the local government services or the management of local government areas in this country. But at this same institution is a symbolic place for what will be called public wastage. Why? For close to 20 years, some 86 galloper cross-country vehicles have been parked behind these walls and gradually are being left to rot over an incident that can be captured as merely negligence on the part of successive governments. The vehicles were originally brought into the country to be used by district chief executives, but the then Kufuor government failed to distribute the vehicles to the various assemblies, citing the absence of a written contract in the purchase of the vehicles. Governments thereafter failed to reach an amicable settlement with the importers of the vehicles, African Automobile Company Limited. A drive around to look at the vehicles showed that despite the visibly deteriorating outer parts of the vehicles, the interior looks good. About 14 months ago, that's about July 2017 last year, I was here to do a radio report and speak to a couple of people about it. 14 months down the line, the situation is still the same here. The cars are still weather beaten. The spray coated furnishing of the car is now almost changed into a brownish color, showing the remnants of the fact that it's being wasted away and it's being beaten by the weather and the vagaries of the atmosphere here in Medina. After years of back and forth and litigation, Deputy Finance Minister Kweku Kwarteng says government is ready to dispose of the vehicles. But how?
The vehicles, there were issues in court relating to those vehicles that I'm sure in the past made it difficult for not just customs but government generally to proceed to dispose of those vehicles. But a lot of those matters have been resolved now, and given the rate at which those vehicles are deteriorating, we have made a decision to dispose of them. We're looking to do that before the year closes.
How soon will this be done? Kweku Kwarteng again.
We're taking steps to ensure that those vehicles are disposed of as soon as possible. The evaluation is finished. I'm yet to see the report, but once we know how much the vehicles cost, we may do it through auction, or to the extent that those vehicles have not been cleared. So technically, duties on them have not been paid. It therefore means that we could come under the Customs Act and also dispose of it through auction as an overstayed vehicle.
Reporting for City News from the Local Government Studies Institute in Medina, I am Duke Menso-Opoku.
We get to some other stories, and the Minister for Development or Special Development Initiatives, Hawa Kumsin, says Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu has no basis to question the relevance of the ministry she superintends when his constituency has been one of the top beneficiaries of projects from the ministry. At the conclusion of the budget debate, the Minority Report said His side would not support the allocation to the said ministry because it is creating a needless conflict. There's more in the following report.
The House, after days of vigorous debate on all aspects of the budget, approved the financial policy statement. The final contributions, however, were from the leaders of the two sides of the House. Making final comments on the 2019 budget debate, Majority Leader Osei Chairman Sabons indicated that the superb economic management of the Akufo-Addo administration had exposed the shoddy job done by the Mahama government.
Never again shall we fall victims to propaganda and grand deception. Mr. Speaker, this is the reason why some people are still kicking against the free senior high school education, and those people benefiting from the free senior high school will definitely know where to consign their oppressors. Mr. Speaker, without any shred of doubt, this indeed is set to provide a stronger economy for jobs and the creation of prosperity and equal opportunity as the preamble of the 1992 Republican Constitution provides. It is for this reason, Mr. Speaker, that I urge all my colleagues in this House to stand up and be counted if they want jobs and prosperity for their constituents and communities.
But the minority leader disagreed. He said most of the policies of the current government were failing and indicated his side will not support allocations to the Special Development Ministry.
May I use this opportunity to call on the President that his Ministry of Special Initiative, Mr. Speaker, I'm serving a strong notice. We on this side will not support any budgetary allocation or appropriation to that ministry. And we will not, because, Mr. Speaker, the creation of that ministry pursuant to the poverty policies in the MPP manifesto, IEP as is captioned, is creating conflict with the established development authorities of the president, whether it's Zango Development Fund, is the Northern Development Authority or the Coastal Development Authority. The ministry is now intended to do things that ordinarily must be done by the development authorities or at best by the district assemblies. And a whooping 1.5 billion is being allocated to that ministry. I say that we will not support that appropriation.
Minister for Special Development Initiatives, Hawa Kumsin, is unfazed. She says the concerns of the minority are unfounded.
You see, if a whole leader of parliament, a leader of a minority, will just stand on the floor of parliament to say this, I beg to differ. Because he knows very well that as last year, it was last year around November when the bill for the development authorities were passed. And definitely they couldn't have done anything. I think their problem is I should have waited for the development authority to come and start with the work so that they will have the opportunity to blame the government, that the government is using the development authority as an excuse, which we never allowed. So they don't understand. I have done the work, waiting for the operationalization of the development authority. And that is it.
Back in the House, the question was put for the 2019 budget statement to be approved. Earlier, Energy Minister John Peter Amewu was in the House to brief members on an alleged plot to blow up oil facilities in the Western region.
I will read out the letter to the August House for the House to know exact words that we communicated to national security.
Honorable Minister, all we want to know is that you have asked national security to protect life and property. That's all. Have you asked them to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we've asked them to do that.
So finally, after 7 days of keen debate on the 2019 budget, Parliament has approved government's financial policy statement for the year ending December 31st, 2019, which is obviously next year. So next year's budget, in essence, has been approved by Parliament. What is left is for the appropriations, that is the allocations to the various sectors, the various MMDAs, the various ministries, departments and agencies, as well as other parastatals and government organizations to be taken at the various committees of Parliament and then brought back to the plenary to be debated and approved. Reporting for City News from the precincts of Parliament, my name is Duke Benson Koku.
Right, so I've been joined in the studio by my colleague and head of research, City FM and City TV, Kojo Akoto-Boateng, to throw more light on this development. Thank you very much for your time, Kojo.
Thank you for having me, Firma.
Right, so now you've heard what the minority is saying. What do you make of all this?
It's quite a bit of a serious issue. If you look at this government's plans for infrastructure for poverty eradication, so they call it the IPEP, Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Project. So they set up the Ministry for Special Development Initiatives that is going to, among other things, implement the IPEP program with the various development authorities. Now, before Parliament passed the bills into law for us to have the development authorities, the ministry was already in existence. So they started some work, formed 10-member committees in the various constituencies to identify projects to be done. Now, if you look at the ministry in its entirety, it's really not an economic ministry, if we should put it that way. They are a ministry that is procuring toilets, they are procuring dams, warehouses, and other things that you think that others could do if it's well coordinated. For example, some have argued that some of the things they are doing should fall directly under the Ministry of Food and Agric. But if you look at the ministry structure, they are working with finance, water resources, sanitation, food and agric, and now we have the development authorities. Now the minority feels that we don't really need the ministry now that we have the development authorities.
Okay, now before we move on, that ministry is the Mother Ministry for the Coastal Development.
Coastal Development, which is taking care of Western Region, Central Region, Greater Accra Region, and parts of Volta. It's the Mother Ministry for the Middle Belt Development, which is taking care of Ashanti Region, Eastern Region, and the BA. And then there is the Northern Development Authority, which takes care of parts of the BA, the Northern Region, Upper East, Upper Region, and parts of Upper Volta.
Right. So what exactly are these authorities supposed to be doing, and how does that sit with the ministry's work?
Now, if you look at the governance structure, ministries are basically supposed to be policy formulators.
Yeah.
And then they are the implementing agencies under the ministries. So the various authorities are supposed to lead the implementation and also to ensure that they galvanize the regional growth of the regions that they've been assigned. Now, if you look at how the regions and our spaces interact, if you are doing any development for the Greater Accra region, you should know that they are interacting closely with Southern Volta, interacting closely with Central Region, interacting closely with the Western Region. So there should be coordinated development. So these authorities are coordinating the spaces they are in so that the development will be coordinated and there will not be imbalance. So the minority feels that, look, the ministry is now more like an implementing agency while we have the development authorities which don't seem to be doing anything. And the budget has been given to the ministry or assigned to the ministry. It's not too clear if the authorities are going to have the space and the room to operate. And to give us the goods, let us have the authorities running. Let's disband the ministry. Let them work with the various other ministries that we have, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Food and Agric. So the agric-related initiatives, they could work with the Ministry of Agric. And mind you, aside the authorities, we have the regions within the spaces they are working with, and we have the districts and municipal areas and the metropolises within the spaces they are working with. So there are different structures of interactivity and governance and delivery. So the element of having the ministry really to the minority is not really important.
Right. Now, the minority has also raised the argument that, for instance, the 1 million per constituencies should not be expended by the ministry. What do you think about that?
They feel that the 1 million per constituency should go to the authorities to deliver. Now, this is what happened. Before the authorities, the bills were passed into law. The ministry was already in existence, and they had to work. So they got 10-member committees in each of the constituencies to come up with their needs so that the 1 million will be disbursed to them to do whatever they are doing. Now, if you look at the new budget, an amount of about, a different amount has been assigned. I think it's about 88 million Ghana cedis, which will be distributed to the new areas that we've created. So there's a bit of coordination, governance, implementation policy, who should do what? Do we have the systems already in place to ensure that these things are done? Now, if you look at the functions, the core functions of the ministry, it says they are to translate priority policies and programs into strategies and projects, and for implementation by the 3 development authorities. So they lead policy, development authorities do the implementation. But from the minority's understanding and from what has happened so far, it's the ministry as a policy formulator that seems to be doing everything, leaving the authorities a bit redundant.
Okay, but can we allow the authorities to stand without the ministry? They are calling for the scrapping of that ministry. Can we do that?
That's a good question. Can we allow the authorities to stand without the ministries?
Yeah.
Yes. We can allow the authorities to stand without the ministry.
Considering they are under the ministry?
We can also have the ministry do the coordination if they are going to do it efficiently and allow the authorities to grow the economic zones they are in and to grow the spaces they are managing, and not just to be another means of procurement, but another means of bringing proper economic development to the people. Now, an example is SADA. When SADA was formed, there was no specific ministry created to oversee SADA.
Yeah.
But SADA worked with the Ministry of Food and Agric primarily, and other ministries to deliver development to the people of the North. There was youth and employment and all those related. So interagency coordination, interministerial coordination in certain areas, especially with these development authorities, could make the development authorities work without the ministry. And still, because look at the government. We have Ministry of Planning and Monitoring, Senior Minister's Office. We have all the various ministries and bodies that can help these agencies run. And the other arguments they are also making is that, look, an amount of 1.2 billion is being allocated to the ministry. And it looks as if the ministry is taking over the funds and doing as they do wish without recourse to the authorities. And it's quite a big thing. If you listen to the various players in development planning and development implementation, it's quite a big thing for them. Let's cut down some of these excesses. Let's allow the implementers to deliver the goods to the people, and let's use our funds and our resources effectively to lift Ghanaians out of poverty and to deliver the development to them.
Right, so don't you think that is pretty early, because budgetary allocations has been made, they've not been given the money to do the work. They are also working with these authorities. Are we not sure, or otherwise, that monies given to the ministry is going to be expended to these authorities to help them do their work diligently or help them work efficiently? Are we not being too quick to judge?
That's a good question too. And I don't know whether the bit of it too early to want to disband the ministry is in the right move or not. But what we know is that the ministry will not be disbanded. This is Ghana.
Yeah.
Minority will raise their arguments, majority will listen and just throw it away. This is how things have been over the years. As to whether the development authorities would really have the room to operate and implement, that's also a very good question. We've seen a lot of things in this country. Look, if you go to every ministry, Ministry of Food and Agric, they have a lot of authorities under them and agencies under them. But most of the time, if you look at what is happening all around us, even Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing, you have state housing and other institutions that are supposed to deliver and implement the goods. But most times, the policy formulators end up getting into the procurement, end up getting into the implementation, end up taking over sometimes the job of the agencies, and funds that really have to get to the agencies to perform the core functions, which are the core things that will deliver the goods. Let's say the ministry, we are in a car. The ministry is the steering wheel. The agency is the engine. But sometimes the fuel that must go to the engine does not go. The fuel stays with the steering wheel. And if you don't put the right resources where they must be, that's the problem.
So can we say that the ministry is going to be interfering with the work of the authorities or other ministries or, for instance, district assemblies?
We cannot say the ministry is going to be interfering with the development authorities, because as it stands now, per the structure we have, is the supervisory ministry of the development authorities. So they would have to work with them, they would have to formulate strategies together. the key thing is for us to look at how the ministry, the development authorities, the regions, and the local assemblies, because development in the country really should start at the local level with assemblies, the local assemblies, municipal assemblies, and the metropolitan assemblies. How these agencies are going to work together and not duplicate efforts. And not duplicate efforts, because under Planting for Food and Jobs, we are building warehouses. This ministry is also going to build warehouses. And the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation, Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, are going to do toilets and do this. This ministry is also doing same. So we should ensure that within the governance and the structure that must give Ghanaians the results, the things we need to live better lives, to lift us out of poverty, to develop the country, we do not have duplication of efforts. And if you look at the mix we are seeing, there may be a lot of duplication of efforts. There are a lot of bureaucracies being introduced, and there's a lot of power play going on at the moment too, which sometimes stifle growth and delivery of the strategies and the development agenda that we are looking for as a country. So
quickly before you go, do you think that minority has a point that we need to sit back as a people and re-look at the mandate of the ministry?
The minority do have a point. The minority do have a point. In fact, if they are to stretch this to other ministries and in the whole system, they would have a point as to whether our politicians, like Bernard Avles said, we should go beyond debates, I am right, you are wrong debates, and ask the question, what really do we need to put in place for Ghana to work? What really do we need to put in place to ensure that every city we invest as a country, as a government, gives us the right returns, so that the problem we are attempting to fix today won't be the same problem tomorrow? I think that's what the bigger thing that we need to be looking at as a people.
Kojo, thank you very much. Right, so I've been talking to Kojo Boateng. He is the head of research, City FM and City TV, and we've been discussing the minorities' claim that the Ministry of Special Development Initiative needs to be scrapped and that they are not going to be supporting the approval of their budgetary allocation. Now in some other news, the 6 proposed new regions will each receive 20 million Ghana cedis if they pass through the upcoming referendum, with the Supreme Court clearing the path for the referendum after it threw out a writ opposing the process. Government is focused on the successful conduct of the exercise. Minister for Regional Reorganization and Development, Dan Butche, has been outlining the government strategy.
At least 50% of the persons entitled to vote cast their votes at the referendum. And of the votes cast, at least 80% were cast in favor of that issue. 50%, now that we know the places where the referendum should take place. So it's a question of adding all the total registered votes in that area. 50% of that should turn out to cast their vote. And 80% of those who cast their vote should vote yes before you get your referendum. So it does not follow that just because of this, automatically we have 6 regions. No. It may happen that nobody will pass this. It may happen that only 1 region will pass, 2, 3, 4. It may also happen that all the 6 will pass. We have intimated during our interactions with you that government is not campaigning, spending any money to campaign for the creation of regions or to campaign against the creation of regions. No. Government is not spending any money on that. This, as Mr. President has stated, is driven by those who petitioned. And I'm sure if you contact your colleagues in the regions, you might have seen that they have bought their own pickers, they have made their own T-shirts, and they are campaigning. They are, I've been told that some songs have been made to campaign.
To some other stories, and the Akufo-Addo administration is optimistic that Ghanaians will be able to elect metropolitan, municipal and district chief executives, MMDCEs, by the year 2021. This was revealed by the Minister for Local Government and Rural Development, Hajia Halima Mahama, at the launch of the 70th New Year School and Conference of the School of Continuing and Distance Education of the University of Ghana. There's more in this report filed by CitiNewsroom and Shelley Ziu.
The annual New Year's School and Conference over the years has identified topical issues of national and international interest, and this year's event, which has been held under the theme Building Strong Institution for Democratic Consolidation in Ghana, is no exception. An acting chief director of the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs couldn't agree more.
Let me just say that institutions really matter, and they reduce uncertainty within the state. They make the actions of you and I predictable. So in other words, I want to say that we are all institutionalists. So we in the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs are convinced that strong institutions are critical to the consolidation of Ghana's democracy. Now, by consolidating or by consolidation, we are interested in stability and persistence of democracy and democratic principles. We are interested in the achievement of deep legitimation of our political system to the extent that all the key players, both the elite and the masses and the foot soldiers among others, believe that democracy or democratic rule is the most appropriate. Indeed, it is better than any other alternative that any of us can imagine. We contend that democracy must be the only game in town, attitudinally, behaviorally, and constitutionally. From the minimalist definition of consolidation of democracy that put emphasis on elections alone into areas where we consider the quality of democratic outcomes, we ought to be interested in whether democracy is promoting justice. We ought to be interested whether democracy is promoting efficiency, liberty, equality, or ultimately the common good, or what J.J. Rousseau will call the general world.
Speaking at the same event, Minister for Local Government and Rural Development Hajiya Halima Mahama touched on a very controversial issue of national interest, the election of MMDCEs as part of efforts to decentralize state institutions and departments in order to consolidate the country's democracy.
I'd like to say that the government has in recent past taken various steps towards consolidating democratic benefits of the country in a number of ways. For example, I'm sure you've all heard about the government decision to have direct election of metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives. And recently too, the government has launched and is implementing the National Public Sector Reform Strategies. I think this is a bold decision to have our MMDCs elected. And the government, through the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, is rolling out a program to ensure that our MMDCs are elected on a universal adult suffrage and on a partisan basis. The ministry has developed a roadmap towards this implementation. We are hoping that MMDCs will be elected in 2021, and the ministry has consulted key stakeholders in the best possible ways of pushing this agenda.
She is of the view that the elections should be conducted on a partisan basis, adding, however, that if Article 55, Clause 3 of the 1992 Constitution is not amended, these plans will hit a brick wall.
The key obstacle in getting our MMDCs elected is amendment of Article 55.3 of the 1992 Constitution, which is an entrenched clause. The article states that, subject to the provisions of this article, a political party is free to participate in shaping the political will of the people, to disseminate information on political ideas, social and economic programs of a national character, and sponsor candidates for election to any public office other than to the district assemblies or lower local government units. So the critical area is the other than to the district assemblies. So we need to amend this, and we can amend this. An amendment to this article is therefore critical.
You're still watching the City Newsroom on City TV. We'll take a short break, but when we come back, we have more stories for you. Don't go anywhere.
RMG Ghana wishes all Ghanaian farmers a happy Farmers Day. We say, RMG Ghana Limited, agriculture on sustainable basis.
We spice up your mornings with culturally enriched conversations, social interviews, and policy-oriented discussions that will keep you updated on the progress of the nation.
Those security guys who were supposed to protect them, I'm sure by now somebody must have all of them arrested. They must all be arrested because it's an unprovoked attack.
Join the Breakfast Daily team Monday through Fridays from 7:30 a.m. to 10. Let your voice be heard with the hashtag Breakfast Daily. Join us for breakfast daily, only on City TV.
Thanks for staying with us. Every day, thousands of unemployed youth in the country go in search of jobs, with majority of them failing to secure one. Most return home disappointed given the increasing unemployment levels. My colleague Marie-France Fojo joined thousands of such youth at a Blue Skies job opening this morning, hoping to secure a job.
It's 9 a.m. at Blue Skies in Nsawam in the Greater Accra region, where close to 2,000 people have been queuing since 4 a.m. hoping to secure a job. Unfortunately, only 300 out of this number will be employed. These vacancies arrive a few times a year when demand from the fruit processing company increases. The company will only employ them for a few months.
Well, basically, we came here this morning with the news going out that actually we are recalling some old hands that had worked here, about 300 people maximum. And the message went across that we are doing recruitment. Came here this morning, you cannot even drive through the crowd. And it tells you the kind of challenge that we have as a people and the need for our governments and other agencies and individuals possibly to do more to engage these wonderful people so we can curb unemployment.
So why aren't these mostly senior high school and university graduates seeking permanent jobs?
For now, I don't think I can get some right now, but I prefer the proceedings here. Their payments and their welfare, everything, I think it's good. That's why.
Precisely. I love working at Blue Sky, so looking at the conditions in Blue Skies, I think it's okay compared to other jobs outside.
Actually, you know our system now, the unemployment rate is very high, so I think you find a place where you be comfortable getting something out of it. I think it's better, so that's why we are here.
Like, BBC, I say, Jumano, they say Ghana and Juma in Hono. To no say, I buy any panel hands to be breno, Yapasa buying Shannon Boy, because a Jumano. A woman say a Jumano a mutua a pa, but I am any panifano. Too much into the best by say yes, on boy youth no brepa.
Many of the university graduates declined to speak on camera for fear of ridicule from their colleagues, but off record, they lamented the hostility of the private sector and the difficulty in even securing a job in public offices. In May this year, government came out to say it's created over 1 million jobs. But behind me, hundreds of students, some of whom hold university degrees, are willing to settle for temporary contracts to earn a meager amount of 600 cedis just to get by, all because they could not secure permanent jobs anywhere across the country. From the look of things, government would have to create more jobs. For City News, I am Marie-France Fojo.
So some other stories, and prior to the prepaid electricity system, electricity bills were mostly post-paid. One had to wait for officials of the Electricity Company of Ghana to bring their bills. City News' Marie-France Fojo tells the story of a community that had to wait 6 years for its first bill. The bills, however, mark the beginning of dark times for them. We got some other stories, and 12 persons aspiring to lead the National Democratic Congress as its presidential candidate will have to pay a total of 420,000 Ghana cedis in fees in order to become eligible. The charges were announced today by the party's National Executive Committee after a meeting. My colleague Fred Jabano was at the NDC's headquarters and reports.
According to the party, the decision to charge 420 cedis as fees will largely help cater for the huge cost associated with holding elections of that magnitude. Women aspirants and persons with disability, however, will pay half the amount. These decisions were taken at the first National Executive Council meeting of the NDC after elections were held to elect new national leaders. Speaking to the media, General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Esiedun Ketia, says persons who seek to lead the party must be able to bear the cost.
Choosing between spreading the cost among our party members and then it is perfectly in line with social democratic principles that those who have the ability to pay should pay instead of spreading that burden. Because you see, the cost must be paid, otherwise the activity will not get done. That is the bottom line. And if the cost must be paid, then who pays the cost? That is where you begin and do your calculation. So the little that we will be needing to supplement what we will be raising through these filing fees will be money that belongs to the party rank and file. So they are paying the vulnerable people in the villages. If we are using their money to pay for the running of primaries, they are bearing their part of the cost. But they will not be presidential candidates. So those of you who will be presidential candidates must be prepared to pay your part. And in any case, it will cost money to undertake a campaign, a presidential campaign. So we shouldn't create the impression that once you become a flag bearer, then the party is going to get money from somewhere to give you to do the campaign. You must have the capacity to also raise funds to support. Demonstrate your capacity to raise funds for 2020 now that you want to be a flag bearer.
The General Secretary also announced some guidelines for the presidential elections, which included qualifications needed to contest the position.
We are selecting a flag bearer to represent us in the presidential elections in our bid to create the next president. And so if there are qualifications that a president of the republic must satisfy, then those qualifications must be imported to guide the process of our selection. So anybody who aspires to lead our party must satisfy the requirements of the 1992 Constitution of becoming a president. Then, second, you must be a member of our party of good standing for at least 10 years. If you want to lead NDC, you must have served NDC for 10 years preceding the date of your filing of nomination. You remember, in the case of parliamentary candidates, the requirement is 4 years. Then, in the case of presidential, it's 10 years. And this is not a new provision. For the past 3 presidential primaries, it has always been part of our regulation. So, if you want to contest, you must have been a member of good standing for 10 years.
And I've been joined by the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Barbara Samoa, to give us a bit more understanding and a greater context to this very interesting piece of news. Hi, and welcome to the City Newsroom.
Hello, thank you.
First of all, can you tell us how the party got to this amount, 400,000 cedis, if you want to putting a nomination and 20,000 cedis for the forms?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. You know, before you have a presidential primaries, we go through a lot of processes. If you pick your nomination, mind you, the nomination forms itself will have to go through processes. So that is why you have to buy the forms, so that we use the process of that to prepare for the vetting and also check for whether all the documentations that you have presented are genuine, and also make sure that we put everything in place for the vetting. And then we also have to organize the primaries. And we are talking about over 300,000 people who are going to be involved in these primaries to select the flag bearer for our party. So we took into consideration the printing of the ballot boxes, the payment of the EC staff that are going to go across the country to supervise this election. We are going to have about 276 polling stations across the country. And, you know, at each polling station, we are not going to have less than 6 EC officials who will travel across the country to conduct and also supervise the elections. We need to pay for all that. We need to convey the delegates from the various branches to the voting centers. Okay. We have to pay for that. Okay. And, you know, the political party, and for that matter, NDC, is not a profit-making venture. And so we carry out some of these activities through taxing ourselves, through payment of dues, and so on and so forth. And so if someone is putting up himself or herself to lead the party, that person must bear in the cost of running these primaries. Okay. And these are some of the issues that were considered at the National Executive Committee meeting before we came up with the figures. Well,
a few years ago, just about 2 years ago or so, before the last time you chose a candidate, each nominee had to pay 50,000 cedis. That's open. That's an open secret. Why that 350,000 CD increase? Because it's just 2 or so years ago.
Thank you very much. You know, the circumstances have changed drastically. At the time we're talking about, we were in government. We had ministers who would support their constituents to go for the elections. We have MMC. We had so many other people who, in one way or the other, would support their constituents to go to the polling station. Now, we have to bear the cost by ourselves. And like I said, it would not be fair for me to pay for the transportation of somebody who is going to elect a flag bearer. At least if he is putting in an effort, the one who is seeking to lead the party must also share in the cost. Mind you, we were talking about 12 people who have elected themselves to lead, to contest for this position. And they are supposed to pay 400,000 each. If you put that together, that gives us about 6 million Ghana cedis. Let's assume that all of them show up for the contest. 6 million Ghana cedis will not be enough to organize it will still not be enough. It will still not be enough. So the party will have to levy the members of the party, the rank and file of the party, who have no interest in who becomes the flag bearer, to make up for the rest of the amount that will be needed to run the primaries. And so those who are putting up themselves as candidates must be prepared to share the cost. So and the question is, which one would you choose? For us to put the burden on the rank and file who are going to elect a flag bearer, or for those who are seeking to be flag bearers to share in the costs?
Okay, so 2 questions. First of all, you're saying 6 million cedis, assuming all these 12 candidates pay up and they are able to meet that requirement. Yes. You're saying 6 million cedis will still not be enough. 1, how much will be enough? And 2, what will you say to the camps who are already saying that, look, 400,000 or 420,000, if you want to add the cost of the forms, is way too much, and it eliminates them from the race?
No, we are not asking people to pay from their pockets. And this is a test case for the aspirants. Because going into 2020, the leader of the party is supposed to raise money for us to run the campaign. Okay. We will need to buy vehicles to go around. We will need to buy fuel. The national executives who will be going around the country, the constituency executive who will be moving around. All these we must have funding for that. And it's the leader of the party who is supposed to lead in the fundraising. So
this is a test case?
It's a test case for you. If you will not be able, let's assume that you have gone around the country, delegates have bought into your vision for the party leadership, and they believe in your cause. You should get at least 2 people from each constituency who are willing to support you. And let's assume that those 2 people, if each person is paying 1,000 Ghana cedis to support your cause, that's already over 500,000 Ghana cedis. And if you are contributing out of that 400 for the running of the primaries, then it shows you that indeed when you are the flag bearer, you will be able to reach out to more people to help you to run your campaign.
Earlier today in the Daily Graphic, the party chairman, Mr. Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, was quoted as saying that the number may reduce. There's 12 now, and possibly by the time you get to this point, or by the time the elections do come around, the number may reduce. Some people think that, or some people believe that such an amount of 400,000 or 420,000 is just one way of reducing the numbers and getting some people eliminated from the process. What's your response to that assertion?
My brother, we've had primaries in this country where contestants or aspirants were supposed to pay as little as 300 Ghana cedis. Not all of them who picked the form turned up to file their nomination. And so there are some people who would even want to test the grounds. And maybe after they have gone around the country, they will see that it is not worth going into the contest because they may not make any showing at all. And so the fact that 11 or 12 people have come with their intention to contest does not necessarily mean that they are going to actually contest. There are others who have not even started going around to campaign. Maybe after they declared their intention, they realize that they are not there yet. The delegates are not accepting them for that high level position, and they may drop out. So the fact that it has always happened, right from the branch level, constituency, regional, and the national level. It has never happened that all the people who pick the form will even bring them back to file and then go ahead with the election. And so if the national chairman, I have not heard him say that, but even if he said that, it doesn't mean that he has or anybody has any plans to eliminate anybody. Now, and like I said, if you intend to lead a political party like NDC that lost election 2 years ago, that is seeking to gain power again in 2020, then you should be somebody who is capable of raising funds. Like, mind you, as I said, the party is not a profit-making venture.
Okay.
So all the activities that we carry out are as a result of the proceeds that we make.
Ways of making yourself financially strong to deal with the burden of an election.
And we need to be satisfied that whoever is coming out as a flag bearer has the capability and the capacity to raise funds for us to run the campaign. Because like the General Secretary said, I wanted to contest for a Deputy General Secretary. I found resources to campaign and win. Somebody wants to be president. That person must find resources to campaign and become president. We are there to assist. Everybody has a role to play. But as to finding resources for the party to run, it is the responsibility of the leader to lead that. And so if you will not be able to raise, we are not saying you should pay from your pocket. If you will not be able to raise 400 to help in organizing the primary that will make you the flag bearer, then I think it will be problematic even if you become our candidate.
Just finally, January 19th is the date you have chosen for the selection of a flag bearer. When exactly are these? When is the deadline for submission and all the paperwork before the D-Day itself?
Thank you very much. We are opening nominations on the 3rd and then we'll close on the 4th. That is the picking of the nomination. That is when you pay the 20,000 to get the form. You have 10 days to go around the country to get 2 delegates from each constituency to endorse the form. After that, you return it. Then it will take 3 days to go through the forms to ensure that everything is okay, all the attachments are correct and everything. Then we'll use 3 days to go through vetting. After the 2 days to go to the vetting, I beg your pardon. After the vetting, we have 3 days period for which any person who is disqualified have the opportunity or who is not satisfied with the decision of the a vetting committee, have the opportunity to go for appeal. After that, we'll do the notice of poll for people to come and check if the information on the ballot paper corresponds to the information they gave the party. Then we will start the printing of the ballots, which will take us about 10 days to finish printing and then distribute it across the country for the election to be held on the 19th of January 2019.
All right. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you, madam.
So that was Barbara Samoa, Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, bringing some light to the news that if you want to contest for the party's flag bearership position, you should be ready to dispense with about 420,000 Ghana cedis. We'll follow up on that and bring you updates as and when they do. Okay, but let's get to Dodowa, where 7 people have been arrested by the Dodowa Divisional Police Command following a scuffle between land guards and landowners on Wednesday at the Shai Osudoku District Hospital, leading to several injuries, a situation that has resulted in patients on recovery being traumatized. And there's more in the following report.
Work at the Shai Osudoku District Hospital and the Dodowa municipality came to a standstill for 2 hours on Wednesday following a scuffle between a group of landowners and land guards at the premises of the hospital. Reports indicate that the fight began at Wodokum, a town in Dodowa, when a group of men clashed over the ownership of some lands. The peaceful nature of the hospital is reported to have turned chaotic upon the arrival of some wounded persons who were involved in the fight. Divisional Crime Officer for Dodowa, Superintendent Ruben Duga, explains circumstances leading to the scuffle.
But the preliminary information we gathered was that what sparked off the incident was the fact that this Nana Opon guy says he owns some lands within the the Wedekum area there, which he has documents over. He says there are encroachers on the land, which he's making efforts through the court to clear them off. But yesterday, what sparked off the whole thing was that he and his worker were around there. There is a poultry farm, so they were around the poultry farm, and they spotted some people working still within his acquired lands. So reportedly, his boys went and seized the working tools of these people who were working, wheelbarrows and others. So this angered those who apparently gave the land out before this guy was working. Those who gave the land out. So they went and confronted them why they should go and seize their working tools. So this is what started a confrontation right there within the community.
The fight between the land guards and the landowners continued at the hospital when persons involved in the scuffle followed the wounded persons to the hospital.
So then some people were wounded and they were brought to the hospital for attention. And then other groups followed. There were insults, there were shouts, there were a whole lot of things. And then fight broke up again. So the injured, some were in handcuffs, split into 2. They started fighting. They were bleeding and fighting.
Gunshots were fired during the tussle.
We pulled them, and then all that we heard was, oof, the first gun. When this gun sounded, everybody started running away, of course,
Right, and that's it for the City Newsroom. For more news, do visit CitiNewsroom.com. My name is Premier Dunyami.
And my name is Nathan Carl. Thank you very much for watching.